There are emotions that make us shrink, that compel us to seek the deepest refuge, as if the world outside were an unbearable threat. It's a primal instinct, an ancient voice telling us to protect ourselves. But what happens when this protection becomes a prison? When fear, a natural guardian, transforms into phobia, an invisible shackle? Let's delve into this journey together, where the wisdom of nature will reveal how a small animal's armor can mirror the complexity of our own minds. Prepare to unravel the secrets of fear and phobia through the eyes of a master of retraction, the armadillo. Fear is one of the most primary and powerful emotions we experience, a vital evolutionary inheritance for our survival. It emerges as an internal alarm, a visceral signal of imminent danger. This is where we enter the territory of phobia. A phobia isn't simply having a slight apprehension or aversion. It's an intense, or those who plan complex, circuitous routes for their daily commutes, just to avoid passing a street where they know there's a dog, even if it's calmly chained in a yard. Phobia paralyzes us, fills us with such intense terror that the only response the body seems to know is desperate avoidance, a flight at all costs from what triggers it. An overwhelming reaction of anxiety and panic triggered by a specific object. There's acrophobia, the paralyzing fear of heights, preventing someone from going to a high floor or looking down from a bridge. The mind shuts down. Thoughts become confused. The body contracts in anticipation of an impact that won't come. And the person longs for a single objective: to escape, hide, and take refuge from any stimulus perceived as a threat, no matter how illusory it may be. It's as if a maximum danger switch is mistakenly flipped, transforming a simple image, sound, or thought into a vivid and real nightmare. The sensation is overwhelming, and the only response the body seems to know is retraction, total, and absolute withdrawal. Claustrophobia, the dread of enclosed spaces, turning an elevator or a small room into a torture chamber. Trypanophobia, the fear of needles, which impedes vital medical procedures. Or social phobia, where the simple act of interacting with others or being the center of attention generates unbearable panic. Situation, place, or animal that, for most people, would pose no danger. This is what makes us instinctively recoil when we see a car speeding towards us, or propels us to flee from an obvious risk, like a fire. It's an essential defense mechanism, shaped by millions of years of evolution to keep us safe. However, what happens when this fear becomes disproportionate, irrational, and persistent, even in the absence of a real and objective threat? Think of someone whose heart pounds violently, hands sweat profusely, and breathing becomes short and shallow just from seeing a harmless spider in a photograph or on TV. The manifestations of phobia are varied and can take many forms. In all these cases, the body and mind react as if facing an imminent life or death danger, activating an extreme fight or flight response, even when reason tells us otherwise. Imagine a creature that, at the slightest tremor in the ground, the rustle of dry leaves, or the distant sound of a predator, doesn't bolt or launch an attack. Instead, it simply disappears. No, it doesn't quickly hide in an existing burrow. It transforms itself into something that is both immobile and impenetrable. We're talking about the armadillo, a true master of passive self-defense. Its powerful muscles, combined with the flexible articulation of its carapace in the middle of its body, allow it to curl up completely into itself, almost instantaneously. No wolf's claw, jaguar's tooth, or hawk's beak can penetrate this bony wall. It doesn't actively fight, doesn't try to flee at dizzying speed. It simply retracts, becomes untouchable, an armored sphere that might roll slightly with the wind. This reaction is purely instinctive, an automatic and highly effective reflex that has been perfected over millions of years of natural selection. The armadillo doesn't think about the action. It acts purely by instinct. It completely shields itself, adopting a posture of total immobility, patiently waiting for the perceived danger to move away or completely dissipate. Its instinct for self-preservation manifests through this total closure, a defensive isolation that lasts precisely as long as needed for the perceived threat to vanish. It's a perfect and elegant choreography of vulnerability, transforming into absolute protection. The result is a compact and nearly perfect ball, where its legs and head are entirely protected within this impenetrable sphere of bone and keratin. With its unique bony armor, the armadillo is one of the most fascinating and well-adapted creatures on our planet. Its back is covered by dermal plates that form a rigid, segmented, and incredibly resistant shell, a millenary evolution that grants it unparalleled protection. However, it's in their most surprising defense mechanism that the true magic lies, and the deep connection with the human emotion we are exploring. The three-banded armadillo, in particular, is the epitome of this ingenious protective strategy. These plates are made of bone, covered by a layer of keratin, the same substance as our fingernails, making them extremely durable. Armadillos are mostly nocturnal mammals, solitary in nature, and are widely recognized for their powerful, sharp claws, perfect for digging complex and intricate burrows where they live, forage, and raise their young. Upon sensing any form of threat, be it the shadow of a bird of prey, the scent of a dog or fox, or even the proximity of a curious human, it doesn't hesitate. It is a living fortress, a mobile citadel that closes hermetically. Now, the extraordinary connection becomes undeniably evident. Observe the armadillo's reaction. Fear compels it to retreat into its armor. It closes in on itself, isolating itself from the external environment, erecting an impenetrable physical barrier between its vulnerable body and the world that threatens it. As in the case of phobia, our mind and body also tend to violently contract. When he's called upon at work to present a new project, his body and mind react instantly, almost perfectly mimicking the armadillo's retraction. Muscle stiffening, withdrawal, and desperate search for a safe hiding place are incessantly repeated. The armadillo closes physically, becoming an untouchable sphere. The human, in turn, often closes emotionally, socially, and even cognitively. Both seek an absolute refuge, an armor, against what they perceive, at their most primal level, as a deadly and inescapable danger. He feels his throat dry to the point of being unable to speak. His legs tremble uncontrollably, and the overwhelming desire is to disappear, to be unnoticed by anyone. He closes in on himself, avoids eye contact at all costs. His words become inaudible monosyllables, and he hunches his shoulders and gestures, minimally, as if trying to become as imperceptible as possible on the stage or in the meeting room. He, of course, cannot physically curl into a ball like the armadillo, but his body language, his voice, and his mind scream for a protective shield, for a hiding place that frees him from exposure and judgment from others, which for him are predators as real as those in nature. Think of the person suffering from agoraphobia, the fear of open or crowded spaces. They might metaphorically curl up within the confines of their own home, avoiding at all costs going out, and facing busy streets, crowded supermarkets, or squares where crowds terrorize them. Their home, the familiar and safe four walls of their dwelling, becomes their carapace, their impenetrable refuge against the overwhelming anxiety that the outside world provokes in them. They shield themselves from contact with the external environment to avoid the crushing sensation of panic. It's an instinctive and primal response to ensure its survival. Isn't this, in fact, exactly what we do when phobia or extreme fear overwhelms us, completely dominating us? Just like the armadillo, when facing a threat, be it a real and concrete danger or a distorted and imaginary perception. Let's also consider the situation of Joe, who developed a deep social phobia after a humiliating public speaking experience. The same sensations of shrinking. The remarkable similarity between the armadillo's defensive reflex and the complex human reaction to fear and phobia is not just a poetic coincidence. It is fundamentally rooted in deep and universal biological and psychological mechanisms. In the intricate labyrinth of the human brain, the amygdala, a small, almond-shaped structure, part of our limbic system, functions as our emergency alarm center. When we perceive any kind of danger, whether it is real and tangible or just a subjective interpretation, the amygdala fires immediately. And rapid. Muscles tense in preparation for quick action, and adrenaline floods the bloodstream. In the armadillo, this muscle tension and the agility of its carapace culminate in the action of curling up, an incredibly effective and unique physical defense. In humans, this same generalized muscle tension can lead to pain, stiffness, tremors, and, in cases of phobia, to total paralysis or behavioral withdrawal. It's the body preparing to shrink, to shield itself, or to harden in the face of what is perceived as an imminent blow or an overwhelming danger. This amygdala firing activates an ancient and automatic response known as fight or flight. This reaction, which was crucial for the survival of our ancestors against real predators in prehistoric savannas, still prepares us instinctively today to confront or avoid threats. In the context of phobia, the problem lies in the hyperactivity of this amygdala, which begins to interpret harmless and neutral signals as threatening and catastrophic. This excessive activation leads to a cascade of physiological reactions in the body. The heart beats drastically faster, breathing becomes shallow. Fear and phobia also intensely involve the sympathetic nervous system, a division of our autonomic nervous system that puts us in a state of maximum alert. When this system is activated, the organism's absolute priority is immediate survival. In the armadillo, this translates into a reflexive retraction that it has perfected over millions of years of adaptation and an evolution. In us, this same system can compel us to avoid social situations, to isolate ourselves at home, to freeze when faced with a challenge, or to excessively protect ourselves from interactions and experiences. It is an innate defense program, deeply inscribed in our DNA, that screams at us, danger, shrink, protect yourself, disappear. The crucial difference is that, for the armadillo, the danger that triggers this reaction is most often tangible and real. For someone suffering from phobia, the danger lives predominantly in the mind, constructed by thought patterns and traumatic memories, rather than in the immediate external reality. Let us dive into some practical examples to see how this armadillo-like retraction manifests palpably in everyday life, both in us and in analogies with the animal's behavior. Consider Clara, a brilliant architect who, however, developed a profound phobia of elevators after being trapped in one for hours as a child. For her, entering a closed moving cubicle is like being caught in an inescapable trap. Every time the elevator starts to move, she feels the walls closing in, the air thinning, and her entire body violently contracting. She shrinks into the furthest corner, trying to minimize her own physical space, closing her eyes tightly and clutching her purse to her chest. Activates an ancestral defense mechanism that mirrors the armadillo's behavior. Just as the armadillo responds to a potential predator by becoming impenetrable, we as humans respond to phobia by closing off emotionally and physically, seeking a refuge that protects us from the perception of danger. The behavior might appear different on the surface, but the root, the desperate search for safety, and isolation for an armor against the world, is, at its core, the same. As if by making herself smaller and less visible, she could somehow escape that suffocating and terrifying environment. It's the same armadillo instinct at play, closing herself off from the world, becoming a small, impenetrable fortress against a perceived threat, even if the elevator is perfectly safe. Or imagine Ricardo, a university student who suffers from acute social phobia. When he's called upon to give a presentation in class, his body reacts instantly, mimicking the armadillo's withdrawal. The person might literally shrink in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel tightly, neck muscles stiff, and eyes fixed on the road, avoiding any peripheral stimuli. Any honk, any maneuver by another car is felt as a direct attack, leading to an even greater retraction, a desire to stop and hide inside their own car. He feels his throat dry to the point of being unable to speak, his legs tremble uncontrollably, and the overwhelming desire is to vanish, to be noticed by no one. He closes in on himself, avoids eye contact with classmates. His words become inaudible monosyllables, and he hunches his shoulders and gestures minimally, as if trying to become as imperceptible as possible on the stage of the classroom. Ricardo, of course, cannot physically curl into a ball like the armadillo, but his body language, his voice, and his mind scream for a shield, for a hiding place that frees him from exposure and judgment from others, which for him are predators as real as those in nature. Another common case is driving phobia, where the asphalt and traffic become a minefield of panic. These are just a few vivid examples of how the human mind, upon perceiving a threat. Observing the armadillo, with its unique self-defense strategy, offers us an incredibly rich and fascinating perspective on the complex universe of fear and phobia. It demonstrates to us, in a visual and undeniable way, that retraction is a natural and innate defense mechanism, a primal and deeply ingrained instinct for self-preservation that we share with many creatures. And what about us? What is our capacity to unroll? But this understanding also empowers us to recognize when this defense has become excessive, disproportionate, and, paradoxically, prevents us from unfolding our potential and living a richer, more meaningful life. The greatest and most profound lesson we can draw from this analogy is that, while fear is a legitimate, undeniable, and often necessary emotion, we don't need to live perpetually curled up in our own ball of protection and isolation. True power, true freedom, lies in recognizing our own armor, understanding its protective function, and then consciously choosing when and how to use it. And, most importantly, recognizing when it's time to open up, to expose ourselves to life again, and to explore the vast and beautiful world without the constant and paralyzing need to hide. It is a journey of self-discovery and empowerment. However, while for the armadillo, this strategy of curling up isn't effective, an even perfect solution in its environment, for us humans, it is not always the most adaptive response. Phobia teaches us in a painful way that sometimes the very armor of mind and behavior we create to protect ourselves from a perceived danger can ironically end up isolating us from the world, limiting us, and preventing us from living fully and freely. The armadillo, in its instinctive wisdom, unrolls and returns to explore the world when the danger passes and the threat recedes. Understanding that this reaction of shrinking and retreating is an ancestral instinct, a legacy of our biology, can greatly help us to not blame ourselves for feeling fear or experiencing phobia. We can, and should, learn to differentiate between real and tangible danger and danger that is merely imaginary, constructed by our apprehensions and the hyperactivity of an amygdala that plays tricks on us. Just like the armadillo, we have the intrinsic capacity to protect and defend ourselves. But, crucially, we also possess the conscious ability to unroll, to open ourselves up to the world again, to gradually face what frightens us, step by step, and to build a new form of security, no longer based on flight or isolation, but on inner resilience, overcoming challenges, and deep self-knowledge. The armadillo, in its simplicity and effectiveness, reminds us that, often, courage is not the complete absence of fear, but rather the deliberate act of unfolding despite it.